Thank you, Jack, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this wonderful conference. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm going to, take you back to even before the foundation of ZSL, to a little archive that we have at the Linnean Society of the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society, where you can see some of the beginnings and hopefully provide a little bit of the historical context in which ZSL emerged, really. I'm going to go start slightly further back with the foundation of the Linnean Society in 1788. Joseph Banks not only actively incited the founder of the Linnean Society, James Edward Smith, to buy the collections of Carl Linnaeus when they were put up for sale in 1784, but also to found the Linnean Society in 1788. He basically thought that a learned society entirely devoted to natural history was missing. And the foundation is based on the same system as any learned society, in which you have elected fellows that meet monthly to hear papers that are then submitted to be read at these meetings, and if the papers are deemed to be good enough, then published in the journals of the society. At this point is the proceedings and the transactions of the Linnean Society, and it's a format that will be emulated and quite common for all learned societies. So we've got this example of a paper of a red panda by Thomas Hardwick, for example, and you've got the original manuscript that was read at meetings of the society, a rather large painting, watercolor painting of the red panda, and then the actual paper which was published in the transactions of the Linnean Society in 1827. And for the first 40 years of this existence, the Linnean Society was indeed the main channel for the communication and publication of natural history in Britain. Its aim was to promote natural history in all its branches. But as the investigations into the natural world multiplied, the society really lacked the funds and the resources to deal with them all. And it was also felt that by 1818, roughly, too much space was given to botany and not enough to zoology. And actually, when you look at the distribution of papers, and I'm going to stop here to thank Gina Douglas, who's in the audience, because she did a lot of the background research that informed this paper, and in particular she found that I think it was Gage, Thomas Gage, who went through all the papers in the Linnean Society journals and came up with these percentages of what was a botanical paper and what were zoological paper. And you can see for the first 50 years of the Linnean Society's existence, it's roughly 50-50 actually. And indeed, for the years that we're interested in, between 1822 and 1828, there are more zoological papers than botanical papers. So this impression that the botanists were ruling the Linnean Society is not quite accurate. Yet, at the same time, there's been an attempt to set up more specialist society, especially by entomologists. And it can be really hard to follow the quick birth and date of each society, as they seem to have come and gone at quite an alarming speed throughout the end of the 18th century and the first 2 decades of the 19th century. And I won't go through all of this, it's just to give you an idea of what happens with the various entomological societies, which is just to show it's quite a complex landscape for learned societies in the beginning of the 19th century. And it's at this point that the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society comes in. So we can follow, it's quite tumultuous few years. It was only in place for 6 years. Through the archives which are kept at the Linnean Society, as you can see, it's not a huge amount of archives. It's contained in one of our drawers. And they're worth investigating in more depth than what I will present today. I didn't have too much time to delve into detail. But this talk is therefore also an invitation to researchers to come and undertake more work on these archives, and you can see them spread out a little bit more here, and they are catalogued on our archive catalogue, and you can see the hierarchy of the content of these archives. They contain correspondence, bylaws, or the minute books, certificate of elections, draft minutes, and various miscellaneous papers. Before I go into the 6 years of the Zoological Club, it's perhaps worth stopping to review our cast of characters, because it's what makes the archives interesting is the rivalries and alliances which are part and parcel of the story. So there's Reverend William Kirby, who was a leading entomologist, early fellow of the Linnean Society, very famous for his major monograph on the bees of England and his introduction to entomology, which was probably the first popular entomological work in English. He was once a rival to the Linnean Society founder James Edward Smith, because both of them ran for the botanical professorship at Cambridge. And a letter from Smith to Alexander Maclay, actually, Smith wrote, "I do not accuse him of hypocrisy, only thus so far I say the character of a priest in the bad sense is essentially composed of hypocrisy and bigotry." Didn't like each other much. And then you've got Alexander Maclay, who was elected also an early fellow of the Linnean Society, whose also his chief interest was entomology, and who had probably the finest and most extensive collections of entomology of any private individual in England at that point. He was appointed as the Colonial Secretary for New South Wales in 1825, and then left for Australia, and was succeeded by his son William Sharp Maclay, also an entomologist and the originator of the short-lived quinarian system of classification, which I'll talk a little bit more about afterwards. And then Nicholas Vigors, who is an Irish zoologist and politician, who his main interest was ornithology, and who was a proponent of this quinarian system of classifications. These are some of the men who were involved in the Zoological Club at the beginning. And the beginnings are quite troubled, actually. The archives show how much troubled these first few years are. So we've got 2-minute books, one for meeting minutes, one for the kind of council minutes, as well as various drafts of these minutes. Oops, sorry. Let me go back slightly. And one would need to overlay all these together, as well with the correspondence, to end up with a detailed understanding of these first few years of the club. But it took a year to a year and a half for the club to kind of get established and running. And the letters are also quite instructive. So there's 14 letters from William Kirby in the archives, and they're particularly instructive as they show the diverging opinions of members about what the Zoological Club should be for, how it should be related to the Linnean Society, and who should be a member. And throughout the second half of 1822, when the Zoological Club was being formed, William Kirby wrote numerous, slightly whiny actually, I have to say, letters to William Sharp Maclay. He was dithering about whether to become the chairman. He wanted to have an entomological club rather than zoological club. So, for example, in October 1822, he writes, "The best seems to me to have 5 committees, viz. one for botany, another for geology, and 3 for zoology, one for the vertebrate animals, one for the insects, and one for the rest of the invertebrates." The link to the Linnean Society was also problematic. There was a lot of antagonism, rivalries. Should the Zoological Club be independent? Should be as part of the Linnean Society? So he writes in July 1822, "Nothing was further from my intention than becoming a member of any society, much less president, that in any aspect is hostile," underlined, to the Linnean Society. And discussions and disagreements occurred on who should be members. Kirby wanted only fellows of the Linnean Society. Maclay thought it should be open to all zoologists, whether or not they were FLS. Finally, in May 1823, the regulations of the club were approved, And then in July 1823, the bylaws were approved. So this formally founded the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society. The admission fee was £2, 2 shillings. The club met at 8 p.m. on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, with discussion of paper being a feature of the meetings. And the first papers were read in August 1823. In the end, only fellows of the Linnean Society were entitled to become member of the Zoological Club, and in fact it was very much the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society, so it was not an independent organization. But visitors were welcome, and you can find lists of the visitors in the archives. So this was very much replicating the organization of the Linnean Society, and there's also these lovely meeting cards for the last year of the Zoological Club, actually, which tells you which date the members were meeting. So what was the life of the Zoological Club where once it existed? Papers were given at the Zoological Club during the 6 years of its existence, and I'm attaching this list just in case anyone is interested, who gave how many papers to the club. The successful papers were transmitted to the Linnean Society to be published, and this was part of the bylaws. And again, at the beginning, this caused no end of discussion. There's like a full 3 or 4 pages in the minutes discussing whether the Zoological Club should have its own journal and how much indebted it was, and whether having the papers then transmitted to the Linnean Society would mean too many papers published by the Linnean Society, in which case less people would submit papers. I mean, endless, going round and round in circles. Not only were papers read at meetings of the Zoological Club, but specimens were displayed. So you've got William Kirby, Viggers, William Swainson, John Edward Gray, Audubon, William Yarrell, all came to exhibit their specimens. And as well as drawings. Now interestingly, these drawings and specimens no longer exist in the Linnean Society collections. In the case of the specimens, that's probably because if they were kept at the Linnean Society, they were probably all sold at an auction in 1863 that the Linnean Society held, where it sold off all its specimens apart from the Linnean and Smithian specimens, which are still in the Linnean Society. For the drawings, they don't also seem to have been published. And writing this talk, it occurred to me that it was strange that the drawings accompanying the papers the papers that accompanied the drawings that accompanied the papers that were read at the Linnean Society have been kept. So the red panda, for example, is still kept. But if they were larger than the manuscript they've been dissociated from the original manuscript, and they're kept separately. And I do wonder if that's what happened with the Zoological Club illustrations, because we have a whole array of lone watercolors and drawings in our collections, and in fact they may well be linked to Zoological Club papers. This is not something that we've investigated. It only occurred to me as I was writing this. It's tricky because a lot of this loose artwork collection is not properly catalogued, but it might be worth investigating. So I just want to give you a taste of what these meetings were like. On the 22nd of March 1825, for example, William Broderick exhibited a decayed elm and questioned whether it was originated in the ravages of an insect, and William Sharp Maclay disagreed and provided alternative explanations. And then a catalogue of the New Holland birds in the collection of the Linnean Society was read. And some papers were so long that it took 5 or 6 sessions to go through each paper. So this particular paper on the New Holland birds, for example, was read. It took 5 sessions to read it through, from March 1825 to January 1826. I don't know how anyone could keep the thread, to be honest. Another example is on 22nd of May 1827, Audubon exhibited numerous, and I quote from the minutes here, numerous highly finished drawings prepared by him for his forthcoming work on the ornithology of North America. also illustrated them with the occasional remarks on the economy and distribution of the birds figure. And then a continuation of a paper took place as well. One of the particularities of these meetings were that they actually actively encouraged discussions of the papers. And that was followed, the exhibition of the specimen or drawings or the reading of the paper. So, for example, Maclay's quinarian classification, which is basically a classification based on the number 5. So every single group is divided into 5. And that's a visual illustration that we have in our Maclay archives. So that classification was enthusiastically taken up by Nicholas Figures and generated various discussions over several meetings. And it's interesting to note that such discussions did not take place at the Linnean Society at the time. And this is very much something that was clearly inspired by the Zoological Club when Thomas Bell, the president of the Linnean Society, installed these discussions. So that was a direct influence from the Zoological Club. So we come to the end, basically. In the last few years, quite a few meetings did not take place as there were insufficient members members present to form a meeting. For example, there's a huge gap in the minute book between June and November 1828, and as you can see, 3 of these meetings were cancelled in 1829, as the meeting book reveals. So that in November, the Council of the Zoological Club resolved that, quote, it be submitted to the club to determine whether, in consequence of the diminished attendance of the members, the meetings shall be discontinued after the 29th of November, and the members were sent this invitation to attend the anniversary of the anniversary meeting of the club to determine its fate. And at this final meeting, it was decided that the meetings of the club would be discontinued, and it was noted that thanks of the club are due to the Council of the Linnean Society of London for the use of the Society's room in which members have passed many happy evenings during the last 6 years. But of course, all was not lost for zoologists, because part of the reason of the demise of the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society was the birth of yet another society, the Zoological Society of London. And so the story of the Zoological Club of the Linnean Society comes to an end as another one begins, which today is all about. So thank you for your attention. I just wanted to reiterate my thanks to Gina Douglas, whose research greatly helped the writing of this talk. Thank you.